So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Tannenbaum's World Olympics for All webinar series. My name is Daniel Del Nido, and I'm Senior Education Program Associate at the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding. I'm looking forward to our final conversation here today about teaching the values of respect, diversity, and good sportspersonship through the Olympic Games. I'd like to note as we begin that this session is being recorded. You'll be able to access the recording on Tannenbaum's website and on YouTube after today's session is finished. And as always, I'll be taking questions at the end of the session. If you have any questions that you'd like me to address, please put them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end. I'm excited to begin part 5 of our webinar series on using our updated curriculum, World Olympics, to build behaviors of respect for difference, including religious difference in students. But before I get to that, for the final time, I have some pop quiz questions for you. So, question number 1. What was the first official mascot of the Olympic Games? So official mascot here. Is it A, Valdi the Dachshund, Vuchko, Little Wolf, Schuss, the stylized skier, or Ronnie the raccoon? You can put your answers in chat. Any ideas on that? Which was the first official mascot of the Olympic Games? Okay, great, thank you. All right, the correct answer is B. Oh, yeah, sorry, A, Valdi the Dachshund. Sorry, I guess was reading things wrong here. So the first official Olympic mascot was Valdi the Dachshund. Now, there was a mascot at the 1968 Olympics, but it was an unofficial one. So mascots weren't officially adopted by the International Olympic Committee until the 1972 Games in Munich, Germany. So that was a tough one. Next question. Which Olympic Games were unofficially dubbed the Olympic Women's Games? Was it Innsbruck, 1976, Seoul, 1988, Sochi, 2014, or London, 2012? So which games were unofficially known as the Olympic Women's Games? You can put your answers in the chat here. So I see C or D. So 2014 or 2012. The answer is London, 2012. So this Olympics was unofficially called the Women's Games because it was actually the first Summer Olympics where women weren't barred from a single sport, and where, for the first time in Olympic history, each participating nation had at least one female competitor. So thank you all for your answers to these quiz questions. I hope that these questions got us thinking a little bit about what goes into putting on an Olympic Games, and maybe even what you might do if you were putting on a Games for yourself, for your own school or your own class. Planning your own class, grade, or even school-wide Olympics is the theme of today's webinar. Celebrating diversity of talent, culture, and religion in this way is central to our work at the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding. Tannenbaum is a secular, non-sectarian, not-for-profit organization that promotes justice and builds respect for religious difference by transforming individuals and institutions to reduce prejudice, hatred, and violence. As a secular and non-sectarian organization, we're not here to promote religion, nor to denigrate religion, nor to advocate for any particular religion. We're here because religion is an important component of people's lives and identities, and we believe that everyone, regardless of their religious or non-religious affiliations, deserves to have their cultures, beliefs, and practices treated with respect. The World Olympics for All webinar series will give you practical advice on how to teach behaviors of respect through the Olympic Games in a way that is fun, interactive, and builds important social and emotional skills in students. Our aim is to make teaching respect easy for teachers. We will show you how to use current and past Olympic events to teach social and emotional skills of respectful curiosity and good sportspersonship. We will also give suggestions on how to fit lessons and activities that build social and emotional skills into English language arts, social studies, and even STEM content areas. By the end of this webinar series, we hope that you will be inspired not only to use some of the content that we provide, but also to build on the lessons and activities we discuss and to make them your own. This discussion is made possible by a generous grant from the Nissan Foundation. Without their support, we would not have been able to take the time to develop the unique tips and suggestions that we will provide in this webinar series. Their support has also made it possible for us to deliver these sessions free of charge. As we begin today's session, I would like to take this moment to thank the Nissan Foundation for its support of Tannenbaum's work. Now, today's session is going to focus on planning and putting on your own Olympic event. The Olympic Games that you might do with your class or program or school is a wonderful culminating event for this curriculum. Unit 5 of World Olympics gives you advice on how to do it in a way that values the diverse contributions students can make to their Olympic Games. Students will bring their own unique set of skills, knowledge, and talents to the Games, and it is important to create space for and to value all of these gifts. Accordingly, an important goal of this unit is to give students an opportunity to assess their own talents and skills by developing criteria for the 4 categories of your Olympic Games: sports, academics, arts, and fun or silly games. The lessons in this unit will also give students an opportunity to reinforce the social and emotional learning they have conducted throughout the entire curriculum. Creating goodwill gifts to present to each other reminds students of the work they've done defining the values of ideal athleticism and good sportspersonship from Unit 1. Rehearsing the opening and closing ceremonies, along with the games that they choose to include, will allow students to integrate the motto that they created in Unit 2 and to practice the values that it expresses. It will also give them an opportunity to integrate their presentations on nations and cultures represented at the Olympics into their own event. The activities we will discuss today stem from Unit 5 of our World Olympics curriculum. These activities develop Common Core ELA literacy standards of oral and written communication in a variety of ways. Students will describe what events their groups will put on and request assistance from school staff, both orally and in writing, collaborate to assess and inventory their own strengths, talents, skills, and abilities for each Olympic category of games, develop critical thinking skills through group discussion of the diverse skills needed for teams to compete successfully in each Olympic category, and to set goals for themselves and their groups to ensure that all tasks and projects are completed in a timely fashion. These lessons will also help students develop the interpersonal and social and emotional competencies they need to work together successfully. Our lessons today emphasize collaborative and project-based learning and provide opportunities for students to assess their own skills and talents. To create their own Olympic Games, students will need to work together and imagine ways to value the diverse talents, skills, and backgrounds of their peers. Goal-setting opportunities will prepare students for more advanced learning as well as some life skills. Now, as we get into today's content, it's important to start out by noting that students should be taking on leadership roles throughout the process of designing their Olympic Games. So going back to episode 2 of this webinar series, we discussed how students can brainstorm and design opening and closing ceremonies for their Olympic Games. You can use a similar process to help students design the competitions for their games. Present students with a set of categories for competitions like the ones on this slide. Have them brainstorm different competitions in each category in groups, and then present their recommendations to the class. Allow groups to ask each other questions about why they chose the activities they did, what materials or preparation may be necessary to perform in the activity, and if there are any practical difficulties that the group might need to address as they move forward putting the activity together. Make sure that your group votes on and chooses activities in each category. Now, it's not necessary for your Olympic Games to have events in the 4 categories that we put up here on this slide: sports, academic, arts, and fun or silly games. However, we chose these activities for the curriculum because they ensure that individuals with a diverse range of interests, talents, abilities, and skills can participate fully in the games. If you choose to set your own categories for Olympic events, make sure that you provide space for a wide range of physical and intellectual abilities, including from your students with disabilities. We recommend having students discuss among themselves the different talents and abilities that are represented in each Olympic activity. Have them list out the talents and abilities that are relevant to each category of event, and then ask them if there are any talents or abilities that they themselves possess or that they can think of that aren't represented anywhere in your Olympic program. Allow students to add activities to your list or to alter the activities to ensure that everyone is included. On this slide, on the right, you can see how one group participating in the YMCA of Greater New York's Global Challenge organized their own Olympic activities. Once students have developed a list of talents, abilities, or skills needed for each category of events, you can then ask them to evaluate their own talents and skills to see what would be the best fit for their own participation. Have your students brainstorm those activities that they possess that they need to participate in the different events, academics, athletics, the arts, and fun or silly activities, and record them. They can do this individually and then talk about their responses in groups, and then finally report their results to the class. As they report out, make sure to record the responses on the board or on a piece of chart paper. Going through the different talents required to participate in different activities will help students understand and appreciate the value of diversity of talent and of ability. A great way to lead a discussion with students about valuing diverse abilities is through the concept of teamwork. Doing so also allows you to remind students of the social and emotional learning that they did all the way back in Unit 1. So have them look at the list of attributes and talents they created for each of the 4 categories, and then ask them what, listing these attributes tells us about why we need to work in teams to compete. Do your students know anyone, themselves included, that excels in all of these areas? Probably not. Good teamwork lets us gain the benefits of each team member's unique talents and abilities and make us all compete as a stronger unit. To help students think about the importance of teamwork and valuing different skills and abilities, you might also consider having them review the charts and slides you used in Unit 1 to review the traits of good sportspersonship and ideal athletes. Having students think about the talents and abilities relevant to different Olympic events is a great opportunity for an extension activity on the Paralympics. Students are often familiar with the different sports and athletes at the Olympic Games, but aren't always so familiar with how the Paralympics defines and categories the disabilities that make athletes eligible to compete. So the chart on this slide shows the 10 different categories of disabilities recognized by the International Paralympic Committee. You can divide your class or your program into groups, or have the students partner up depending on the size of your group, and have each group or pair research a disability category. Groups can then report their findings to the class. You can extend this activity even further by having students look at how the Paralympics determines sport classes for activities depending on the level of their disability and the type, and have athletes compete within their sport class. The International Paralympic Committee's website includes a complete list of summer and winter Olympic parasports. Have students look through this list and ask them how the Paralympics ensures that different talents and abilities are included in the events. What modifications have the Paralympics made to different events to make sure that they are inclusive? And what can your students learn from these examples? Once students have reviewed the importance of teamwork, it's time for them to move forward with creating their teams. In Unit 4, students had the opportunity to research particular countries, their customs, and their cultures. Building off of these lessons, students will now create name tags, patches, and flags for their Olympic teams. By activating students' prior knowledge from Unit 2, we can remind them of the unifying principles found in their Olympic motto, oath, and ideal. This sense of unity and belonging will be reinforced in this activity. Now, this lesson employs station teaching, and is a really great opportunity to collaborate with colleagues in other departments, such as the art department. They are a valuable resource and sounding board for materials and procedures that you can use for these stations. Prepare the materials for the following 3 stations in advance, including directions and a model for students to reference at each station. The specifics of each station can be found in Unit 5, Lesson 2, but we can see here that the patch station should have small fabric or felt squares. The design of the patches can be the 5 Olympic rings or an image that is specific to your school or group. It can be your school's mascot or one that your group votes on together. The name tag station should have large squares of fabric or felt, and it should include the student's name as well as the country that they are representing. The flag station should have construction paper or other materials to create the flag of the country that they are studying and going to represent in their games. Have a picture of the chosen country's flag for students to refer to, and make sure they have paper in the colors of the country's flag. These 3 stations are a starting point. Feel free to allow your students to think of other ways to wear their team's colors and to show spirit. You can see on this slide some examples of flags that students at middle schools in Brooklyn who put on their own Olympic Games created. Now, even as your students show spirit and pride for their teams, you should remind them to act generously and fairly towards other teams. This point in your program is a good time to reinforce discussions of the social and emotional skills of good sportspersonship and the ideal athlete from Unit 1. You could begin by asking students the following question. Have you ever watched athletes at the end of a sports game, or have you participated in team sports? What do athletes do at the end of a game? Let's think about this now. Take a minute and jot your thoughts down in chat or give some examples. What do athletes do at the end of sports games that they play? Give credit to their coach. Yeah. Shake hands. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So on this slide, we have a couple of examples of what athletes do. They hug, they congratulate the opposition, they shake hands, they give credit to the appropriate people. Now, here's a follow-up question. Why do athletes do this? Why do athletes take the time to do things like shake hands or hug at the end of games? Demonstrate good sportsmanship. Yes, thank you. Many of them are already friends, right? And they're reaffirming that friendship. So good sportspersonship, friendship, camaraderie, respect. We have a vocabulary word up on the top of the slide, goodwill. Athletes act in ways that show goodwill towards opposing teams and players. They may know them, they may already be friends, they may not know them. You can show students a definition of goodwill like this one, and then ask them if they can think of other examples of goodwill that athletes show during competitions or after competitions. The next part of this lesson has students understand that they can foster the same feelings of goodwill by making gifts to share with their classmates. One example of a gift you can have students give to each other are beaded bracelets and necklaces. Although you are free to, of course, choose your own gift or to have students design their own gifts, we recommend this gift because of the many cultures and traditions, both religious and non-religious, in which beads carry special significance. This activity gives you the opportunity to integrate social studies material on the cultural significance of beads and gift giving. One thing to emphasize to your students is that beads have, as I say, both religious and non-religious significance. So for example, worry beads are common in many parts of the Middle East and in Greece. Worry beads are believed to derive from prayer beads, which are used in many religions. These are beads or knots on a string that help people count their prayers. However, not all worry beads today are considered to be religious. You can also point out to your students that the religious significance of beads is cross-cultural. In Hinduism, the strand of beads used for prayer contains 108 beads. Many Buddhists also use a prayer strand containing 108 beads. Beads aid counting in Muslim prayer rituals as well. On an Islamic prayer strand, there are 99 beads, one for each name of God that is found within the Quran. Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or Greek Orthodox churches use bead strands known as rosaries as part of their prayer rituals. And prayer beads are also used in the Baha'i faith. Their prayer strands typically contain 95 beads. More information about beads and their significance can be found in the World Olympics curriculum. And with your goodwill and gift-giving activities complete, you have finished designing your World Olympic Games. And it's now time to move on to preparing for your Olympic event. As you begin practicing and preparing for your Olympics, it's important first to keep in mind that organizing an Olympic Games, especially for a larger group like a program or a school, takes a lot of effort. You will probably find it necessary to recruit other staff members to assist in the undertaking. In our second episode on Unit 2, we discussed how it can be a good idea to work with your students to create something of a chart of the different roles that will be necessary to put on an Olympic opening and closing ceremony, and to brainstorm different faculty and staff and perhaps even parent volunteers who can help. We recommend repeating this process for your Olympic events. And bringing others into your project in this way is a great way to build relationships and strengthen community in your school. There may be staff who excel at scheduling and organization, for instance, and others who have artistic talents, and others who can help set up activities with the appropriate materials. Consider in particular who can serve as designated coaches. These are key personnel to help with practice sessions and who can ensure that things run smoothly. It is also important to coordinate with other faculty and staff at your school to make sure that you can find the time to practice and put on your Olympic Games. Collaborate with your partners to create a schedule for preparation, rehearsals, and your Olympic events, and make sure the schedule is distributed well advanced of the beginning. Keep in mind that students may need multiple practice sessions to be ready to run a smooth Olympic Games. And while you collaborate with faculty and staff at your school, don't forget to bring on students as mentors and leaders in the event. Having students work as student Olympic officials who can direct others to the proper locations during practice sessions and Olympic events, for example, is a great way to build student self-reliance. It's also important to run dress rehearsals of your opening and closing ceremonies. If any of you have ever participated in or directed a school production in theater or music or dance, you'll know how important it is to run things through with students ahead of time to make sure the final performance is smooth. The same is true of your Olympic Games. A few things to keep in mind as you rehearse your ceremonies is, first, to be as specific as possible from the beginning of your design process as to how the ceremony will go. As you work with students, have them consider what space they will use for the ceremony, where they will place different elements of the ceremony within that space, what order the events of the ceremony will run in, and who will be involved at each event. That way, everyone will have have them develop written outlines along with diagrams and flowcharts of the event so that they have visuals to work with. If you're able to run multiple rehearsals of the ceremonies, consider having students hold on to the diagrams during early rehearsals so that they know where to go, and then run a dress rehearsal where students will be, so to speak, off book. Make sure they remember their directions so that on the day or the night of the ceremony, there's no confusion. And you will probably want to have one or several faculty or staff act as directors of the opening and closing ceremonies. A good leadership opportunity for students is to serve as assistant director. Station directors and student assistant directors around the space in which you will run your ceremonies. Make sure they have the diagrams with them so that they can provide verbal instruction to students who might not be sure where to go. A few final things to consider as you imagine a World Olympics at your school. Building community and finding ways to engage families in the Olympic Games reap many benefits. Schools are always looking for ways to connect with families, and what better way than to host an Olympics family night? Get your PTA or student council or other community-based organizations to participate. International Cuisine Night is a great way to extend the nutritional and dietary learning from Unit 3. Students can work together or with their families to bring foods or dishes from the countries they studied in Unit 4 and have a culminating feast that highlights the USDA nutritional guidelines. Putting on your own Olympic Games is also an excellent opportunity for project-based learning that involves many members of your school community. Cross-curricular planning and participation with other disciplines, such as the social studies and art departments, can help in this regard. And authentic and writing and oral communication opportunities are also possible in this process. Have students practice, for example, persuasive letter writing and conducting interviews by writing letters to faculty, staff, and potentially even vendors who could support the games at your school and give them some real-life experience. And finally, don't forget to give students awards for their Olympic achievements. On the left of this slide, you can see how one school acquired trophies and medals for their contestants. You can also have students create medals and other awards as part of their station activity. You can add, for example, a fourth awards station in which students can creatively design and construct awards for participants in your Olympic Games. Whether they create medals or trophies or different tokens of recognition, we recommend giving out a set of awards to the winners of each competition and another set for all who participated in putting on your Olympic Games. The World Olympics curriculum contains sample certificates of achievement that can be distributed to each person who worked on your games, and which includes space for you to record in writing the ways they contributed to the event. Now, as a last note, as we begin to wrap up this webinar series, I'd like to take a minute to talk about how you can really think about putting on your World Olympics project as a culminating project for the academic and social and emotional learning your students have done throughout the World Olympics curriculum. Try to be intentional about integrating the social and emotional learning students have accomplished throughout the curriculum, and make those goals explicit in your events. Consider putting up in a central, visible space the agreement of good sportspersonship you created with your students in Unit 2. You might also add pictures of athlete role models, like the ones you discussed in Unit 1, to further reinforce principles of fairness, teamwork, and good sportspersonship. Read the Olympic motto and good sportspersonship agreement during your opening and closing ceremonies, and thank all of your students for abiding by them. You might also think of ways to integrate your knowledge of the history and present of the Olympic Games into your events. If your students' opening and closing ceremonies were inspired by historic Olympic ceremonies, for example, ask a group of students to put together a slideshow or a gallery of images from those ceremonies and put down in writing why they found those ceremonies meaningful. You can also ask students to create brief reports on the history and meaning of different elements of the Olympic program that they're using. There are a number of ways you can also celebrate cultural diversity in the course of your Olympic Games. Even if you don't put on a family or culture night, you can integrate your students' research presentations from Unit 4 into a parade of nations at the beginning and the end of your games. Or you can provide snacks that represent the different cultural and religious approaches to diet students learned about in Unit 3. And finally, I'd just like to make a brief note about the World Olympics curriculum. Throughout today's presentation and this webinar series as a whole, we focused primarily on the 5 units of the curriculum with lessons, activities, and extensions. I would also draw your attention to the material in the curriculum's appendices. In the appendices, you can find readings appropriate for the classroom on the Olympic Games, as well as other books that reinforce the social and emotional learning goals of the curriculum. You can also find more advice on small group learning and other best practices for teaching the curriculum's lesson in an inclusive manner that we haven't had time to cover. And there's also reference information on World Olympics and on extra vocabulary that you can introduce to students. You can also find more information to help you get started on our website. Our World Olympics page contains links to download the curriculum and for additional written materials. For more information on the pedagogical theory underlying the World Olympics curriculum, check out Tannenbaum's pedagogy page. Here you'll find full descriptions of our 7 principles for inclusive education and our 6 behavioral learning outcomes. Together, these pedagogical principles spell out the social and emotional goals of this curriculum and provide you with practices to help you achieve these goals, not just when you're doing World Olympics, but every day in your classroom. And if you're interested in additional lessons, even outside of the curriculum, to teach behaviors of respect for cultural and religious difference, take a look at our new community building resources page. And with that, we are reaching the end of our webinar series on World Olympics. However, that's not the end of the conversation. We're pleased to be able to offer 2 town hall sessions for you to ask questions about World Olympics or any other topics related to inclusive education. Our first session will take place on Tuesday, April 26th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and the second session will occur 1 week afterwards on May 3rd at the same time. These sessions will be open to anyone who registered for any of these 5 sessions, so feel free to copy and paste these links into your web browser to sign up for a time. I'll also send out a follow-up email after this session with these same links, so don't worry about it. We hope to see all of you who have joined us during this series for more conversation about inclusivity and respect for difference. And that brings us to the end of our webinar series. On behalf of myself and the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding, I'd like to thank you for attending and participating in each of these 5 sessions. It's been wonderful to host this event and to hear your thoughts on the curriculum and on the Olympic Games. I hope that this webinar series has given you ideas on how to use our World Olympics curriculum in your classroom or your program, and how to make your teaching practice more inclusive overall. If I could ask one more favor, though, at the end of this session, I'm going to be circulating a brief 3-minute evaluation form for this webinar series. Your feedback is immensely valuable to us, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time to tell us your thoughts about this program. And so once again, thank you very much for your time and your participation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Have you ever used this program in concert with a school's Model United Nations? No, but that's a great idea. Thank you so much for giving that suggestion. I think that's a great, a great connection that can be made. Another program that you could do this with. This has been done. This curriculum has been used with after-school programs, more generally. But I think a Model UN is a really great outlet for this kind of work. So thank you for that. Absolutely. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all once more and have a great afternoon. Yes, the survey will be emailed. Yes, I'll send out an email to everyone right, in a couple of minutes after I finish. All right, have a good day.